When Golden State picked up Kevin Durant in the 2017 offseason, the idea was that they'd be able to create such a high-powered offensive unit that no matter who stood in their way, they'd just simply score too much to keep up with. And while this was true for the most part, come playoff time, the Warriors were every bit as good on the defensive side of the ball. Now, they had multiple good defenders at various positions like Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, Shaun Livingston, and KD himself brought quite a bit as a rim protector. But if that doesn't quite sound like an all-time defensive roster, it's because it probably wasn't. When your defensive anchor in Draymond Green doesn't have a single flaw, there's just so much room for flexibility and plugging in the gaps. And in the Big Four's first ever playoff game together against Portland, Dre was able to steal the show in one of the greatest defensive performances of all time. Throughout his career, he's been primarily utilized in the role of a free safety, not really guarding any one particular player, just freely roaming the court and turning away potential threats as he sees fit. This is a role he's completely mastered, and there are a few traits working for him here. The first being his mind. He starts this possession in the paint, and as Evan Turner puts his head down on a drive left, Dre quickly recognizes that he's about to counterspin back towards the middle. So he very slightly shifts his positioning to blindside him and keeps his hands high to not give up an angle over the top. You'd think he's operating as a supercomputer out there with the way he anticipates opposing offenses. Instead of following his man to the weak side, he stays parked at the nail to offer help on Dame's isolation. And when Lillard gets just that first stride by Livingston in space, Dre's moving on a string, making a beeline for the opposite elbow where he can just blow up the possession. This sort of play was made possible by his second key trait, and that's his agility. He's positioned near the free throw line on this one as Portland runs a little corner screening action. Allen Crabbe catches the ball with a ton of space to attack and momentum going towards the basket, but in just one quick motion, Green's right there at the cup to help deter a layup. This next one is genuinely one of the best defensive plays I've ever seen. Dame's gonna get into some high ball screen action with Dre matched up in the strong side corner. Because of Lillard's pull-up shooting threat, KD's forced to come up to the level, which leaves him vulnerable to an explosive drive. At this exact moment, it looks like a great opportunity at the rim is inevitable, but Green makes a superhuman rotation to not only beat Lillard to the spot, but also take off vertically, meeting him at the rim for one of his 5 blocks. That mobility also enables him to recover to shooters on the perimeter regardless of where he's positioned. Look at where he's at, camped on the right elbow helping Klay in isolation, and if I told you that from this spot, he'd effectively close out on Mo Harkless in the left corner, would you even believe me? Because, like clockwork, that's exactly what happened, and it almost looks routine. Here's another one where he's probably 15 to 20 feet away from his man, effectively closes out to not give up the 3, and when Al-Farouq Aminu looks to attack that forward momentum, Dre displays some unreal body control as he stays attached every inch of the way and contests a floater. Now feels like a pretty good time to mention the fact that in addition to the off-ball wizardry, he's also an elite on-ball defender in space. He's matched up with Dame in isolation, moves his feet laterally to not give up a drive, and perfectly times his jump to make the mid-range jumper a lot tougher. This time it's CJ McCollum who has him on an island, and although he does use his speed to get the step, Dre does a great job of playing the right hip as he funnels the ball into help down low. CJ loses control, and when Leonard secures a second chance, guess who's right there to pick him up in the post? We often talk about guys defending 1 through 5, but Dre's one of the only players who truly did so with success, again matching up with Dame at the point of attack, and seamlessly switching on to Noah Vonleh, who looks to drive, but that's just cookies for the Defensive Player of the Year. Typically, when a wing-sized player is so agile and effective defending on the perimeter, you associate them with that role. I'm thinking guys like young Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, and in more recent years Mikal Bridges, Andrew Wiggins, or Jaden McDaniels. But what Draymond adds to the equation is the element of legitimately elite paint protection. Despite standing 6'6", he's got a staggering 7'1" wingspan, and when paired with his all-time anticipation and timing, he can erase threats at the rim like a traditional big. This is probably the most iconic play of his entire career, tasked with covering two offensive players all by himself in transition. He first picks up the ball to slow the push, and when it gets moved, he instantly shifts all of his momentum to cutting off that painted area, before stopping on a dime to meet him at the rim without fouling, and that's just defense in its purest form. He can also serve as a pretty big deterrent, driving attempts away from the basket because of how well he positions himself. He's ready to meet Dame, who instead elects to kick it to the corner, and Evan Turner does a great job of attacking the closeout, but Dre's right there to shut off the lane, and the result is a lower percentage pull-up midi. Here's a real similar play. Allen Crabbe burns Iggy on a closeout, and it just feels like every single time anyone on the Warriors gets beat or makes a mistake, one man is ready and waiting to save the day. And a combination of everything I've talked about thus far leaves him one of the best pick and roll defenders in NBA history. CJ's expecting to come off the screen and have a little space to operate, so imagine his surprise when Dre's shot out of a cannon in an aggressive hedge, which leads to yet another forced turnover. 3 steals, 5 blocks, and 12 rebounds do a pretty good job of encapsulating defensive dominance, but even those aren't quite able to capture the many different roles, versatility, and just how much Dre cleans up by simply making the right play every single time down the floor. And just to quickly add fuel to the fire, in this game he also had 19 points and 9 assists, hitting 3 of his 4 shots from deep for a true shooting percentage of 72.6. Basketball Reference's box plus minus model has this game at a 21. And just for reference on how insane that mark is, remember when supervillain LeBron James went into Boston in Game 6 with his legacy on the line? Yeah, that was good enough to score an 18.6. So while the Splash Brothers and Kevin Durant may steal the show through their explosive offensive performances, let's not forget about the defensive anchor who helped turn this team from just a roster of high-level scorers into a two-way force that very nearly went 16-0 in the playoffs. This Game 1 was just another game for one of the greatest defensive players in NBA history. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Draymond. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.